Lane Kennedy. That's coming in live from San Francisco. Not very spiritual in San Francisco today, are we? Mm-mm. Beep, 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 beep.
People.
Are you a horn honker? Like when you're in your car driving, if you get frustrated, at what point do you lay on your horn or honk your horn?
Absolutely non-honker.
Non-honker.
In any case. Unless someone is about to hit me. And then I will honk, but only then.
Lane, what is your honking status?
I honk.
Like,
I live in
just
San
for
any
Francisco? Reason? Just honkity honk, honk, honk?
No, I live here in this city where people are, they don't understand hills. They don't understand parking. They don't understand lights. They sit there and it's a green light and we're just sitting. I'm like, hello, we're in the flow of traffic. What are you doing sitting here? Honk, honk. It's not like honk. I'm not laying it on it, but I do give a little nudge every once in a while.
So you don't maybe take the extra pause as a moment of time to be spiritual in your car? You just get right into the honk?
Oh, no. I always take a moment of pause.
Okay.
There's definitely
Before
a moment of pause and I'm like, hello? And then I give a little honk, honk.
It's a little toot toot?
Yeah, like, hello, honk, honk.
So you never even just lay on the horn?
No.
Welcome to the Sober Curator podcast, where sobriety isn't just a lifestyle choice, it's the ultimate life hack. I'm Alysse Bryson, your fearless guide to a world where hangovers are canceled, fun is mandatory, and we still know how to shut down a dance floor, just with better shoes.
And I'm Tamara Routley, aka T-Bouge, your co-pilot, chaos coordinator, and the one who keeps Alysse from turning this podcast into a full-blown reality show. Buckle up, sober party people.
From lifestyle and travel to pop culture and zero-proof cocktails, we're serving up the stories, trends, and guests that prove sobriety isn't just about what you're missing. It's about finally remembering where you left your keys. Let's get the party started. It's probably because we're all so spiritual. That's probably why. We're probably not horn honkers because we are in alignment with our higher powers, which is what we're going to get diving into today on this episode of The Sober Curator. My name is Alysse Bryson, and welcome to our second episode of Spiritual Gangster. Now, let me set this up for you. We have a bunch of different sections on the Sober Curator. If you have found your way to our podcast, hopefully you have been to our site, thesobercurator.com. But if for some reason you haven't, please go and take a look after you're done listening to this lovely conversation. Right now, we have a bunch of different sections, but one of the sections of the site that has been growing like gangbusters is our Spiritual Gangster section, which is where we have all different pathways of spirituality represented. At the Sober Curator, we're trying to be as inclusive as possible. So whether you identify as being in recovery, or whether you identify as being sober, or whether you identify as being zero proof or alcohol free, we're open to however you want to describe yourself on this journey. You might even be sober curious, which is fine by us. And so with keeping in line with this inclusivity and this everybody is welcome mentality, we have treated our spirituality section the same. Like everybody is welcome to contribute to the site section that has something to say. And so I would love to introduce each of you, and you could let our listeners learn a little bit about what you're contributing to with this section. So Tony, you are the newest to join our group. Welcome. And Tony is joining us this year in 2025. And Tony, let's hear all about you and stoicism. Did I say that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I've been in sobriety for a day or 10. And from the very beginning, I was interested in spirituality, and I've probably studied to some degree just about every religion, cult, following, other areas out there. And I really, because I think I'm a little more self-reliant, I think stoicism and Buddhism really resonated with me as I went through all those studies. And then ultimately, I landed on stoicism, and mostly because most folks have the misconception that stoicism is about repressing your feelings, which kind of comes from our use of the word stoic. But really what it's about is preparing ourselves so our emotions don't run our lives, right? So it's kind of taming that self-will run riot for me. And again, I've grown up in a 12-step program. I've read that literature for decades and was just seeking something to augment my sobriety, some other thought processes and some other thinking. And that's where I landed on stoicism and been studying that for 8 or 10 years. And then the last year really decided to start a blog and start sharing some of my experience, strength, and hope with that little bit of stoicism mixed in there. So that's really my focus.
Thanks, Tony. And we will make sure to add links to your site in the show notes. For those of you listening, Tony has started a new series. And for those of you that are 12-step or 12-step adjacent, Tony is taking a deep dive into each step, correlating with each month for 2025. So his step 1 article has dropped. Step 2 has probably dropped by the time you're listening to this episode. So you might want to even be on the lookout for step 3. And that's really exciting. I'm excited to have somebody taking a deep dive through the steps, but looking at it through a slightly different lens. We'll hear more from you, I'm sure, coming up. Lane Kennedy, our spiritual substance guru. Tell us what that means to you, Lane.
I knew you were going to ask me that question. I'm just like, spiritual substance. Okay, I'll get serious. For me, that means that there's something in the molecules of my body and my being that's working. I look at everything as spiritual. So the food that I ingest, the thinking, my thoughts, my relationships, the way that I honk in traffic, all of it is spiritual. So what's the substance that's causing it or creating it? I'm a mindfulness and meditation teacher, and I'm also a functional DNA nutritionist. So I really investigate how the body is functioning in many different pathways. And I'm always trying to get people into homeostasis. So I really believe that when we're in a state of homeostasis, the soul kind of leads us on a journey. We can heal. So my job is always making sure and sharing about the spiritual path and how to do that. So I love writing about mindfulness. I love writing about nutrition and how it all functions, how it all works in the body, in the mind.
Love that. Love that. I'm a fan. And Amy Liz Harrison, you and I have had many deep dive talks about religion, which is, I would argue, something different than spirituality. Let's hear a little bit about you and your walk of faith.
Yeah. So nutshell version is I was born and sort of raised into the 1980s, 1990s Christian evangelical world, which is a very, my particular church, I'll speak for that, was a very black and white thinking church. And therefore I grew up with that kind of thinking. And when I got sober, it was as if my house that was carefully constructed under those rules just kind of fell apart, or I'm going to say maybe melted away. And I had to be open to that in order to really welcome new practices into my spiritual life. And what that looks like for me today is, and I started doing this in rehab actually, is I have a shamanic ritual that I do for every step. I too am a 12-step background recovery person. And so that's been really fun and interesting. I'm actually writing an article right now for the Sober Curator talking about 12 shamanic rituals for 12 steps. But for me, the journey to non-dualistic thinking is ongoing. And it really takes a lot of undoing and rebuilding, I think, to get myself out of that. So I've really identified with that set aside prayer, set aside everything I think I know. And so I have to keep doing that in order to remain pliable, flexible, open-minded. So I wouldn't say I subscribe to one particular thing now, but I really am open to kind of the grab bag buffet kaleidoscope of different things that are working for different people. It's almost like I'm a junkie now for spirituality. Like, I want to hear more about that. Oh, tell me about that. I'm going to try that.
You also have ADHD, so that might have something to do with it.
Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's safe to say everybody in this conversation today is in long-term recovery. And the way that we define that at the Sober Curator is over 10 years or more of sobriety with no days off. That's kind of how we have decided to refer to long-term recovery. And everybody here on this call is well over that. And so what I find really interesting is that to stay sober for the long haul, it requires more, right? If you are of the mindset that we have a progressive illness that is always getting worse, you might have heard the phrase, our disease is out in the parking lot doing push-ups, right? What does that mean? Well, that means if I were to go out and drink tonight, it wouldn't be like I was starting over. I would, within a day or two or three, I would be worse off than I was when I stopped drinking 18 years ago, because the thing inside me has still been growing. And so I have to be just as progressive with my sobriety and my recovery. I have to. And for me, what that's looked like is kind of echoing what Amy just said. I just try new things all the time. I keep the things that work, and then I layer on more things. And I think for you, the listener, the important thing to hear is there's not only one way to get and stay sober, and it'll change. It'll ebb and flow over the course of your journey. And at where I work, at Work P2P, which is the parent company of the Sober Curator, we like to talk about classy problems. And like, the longer that you do this deal, the longer that you stay sober one day at a time, the classier your problems get, meaning your problems don't go away. You are not without problems. You are still going to lay on the horn and honk at people, right? Things are still not going to go your way. But how do you get through those? And so what I have loved to see at that is that this section of the site, without me pushing, has just taken off. Like, there's so many of you that are contributing to this section of the site. And almost all of the people contributing to the site are arguably in or very close to long-term recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that shows that's how it works. That's how you get, that's how you get to stay sober. And it may not be how you get sober, but it is how you stay sober. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
It's the golden ticket. Mm-hmm. You have to have a spiritual essence to you. There has to be something. I know people that are sober who do not, and they're kind of angry and crunchy and irritable, right? And they're living in long-term recovery. They're not drinking, but is their life rich and fulfilling? I mean, who am I to judge? But and maybe it is, but that's not what I want to choose, right? I want to be fulfilled and happy. I don't want to be looking at the world with a half empty attitude. But spirituality, or having a daily practice, and whatever that looks like, is key to long-term recovery, I think.
I drank because I liked the effect produced by alcohol. So when I drank, I felt different, and I loved that feeling. And the same has become really true for me with spirituality, is I like the effects produced by having a spiritual life and by pursuing that spiritual life, right? And so in the seeking of different things is really how I find my spirituality. It's not like I'm going to get to some thing and be like, oh, this is it. I've arrived. You know, it's just this constant journey and this beautiful kind of music from the other room that I just I'm going to keep following the sound.
Yeah, I think you really have to become a student of sobriety. to stay, sober for a long time. And really that's just about being aware of everything that's going on around you. If you're in meetings or, if I'm just in discussions with folks and I feel some discomfort in myself around those topics, that's typically a sign for me that there's work to be done there. So I think it's just a self-awareness and really being open and being a student of recovery. I think the second thing is really trying to, find an ideal out there, kind of a mentor, whether that be in the form of a spirit or a deity or a human being, and really, set your objectives and your goals and work towards those as well.
I love the answers that all of you gave. Let's try to simplify this just a little bit further. How does that look like? What does that look like in your everyday? And I'm not suggesting that anybody in this episode does spirituality perfect every day. Perfection is not something that is attainable. But what does that look like? What are the tools that you use just on the day-to-day that keep you grounded and connected? Amy, let's start with you.
Sure. I meditate a lot. I probably meditate like a total of an hour a day, but it's broken up into smaller chunks throughout the day. Monday through Friday, I start with a 6 a.m. meeting. And I just find that I am not very good on my own without asking a higher power to come into my day and into my conversation and into my whatever it is that I'm doing. And also, because I think I get clouded by my own expectations, judgments, insecurities. So if I can kind of turn those over and get those out of the way, which I'll do through meditation or through reading Breathing Underwater, sections of that by Richard Rohr, or, any number of different books or spiritual literature. If I can do that, I'm just in a better place. I'm sort of at a neutral ground zero. And then also the other thing that I'll tag onto that is I've learned to grieve things that didn't go my way or things that I thought should be one way or have an attachment to. I've learned to move through a grieving process for those things pretty quickly. And that has been really pivotal in the past year or so for me.
That's huge. That's huge. And I say that only because I feel like I only recently figured that out, is that grieving process of letting go of things that didn't go your way. And usually when I look backwards, hindsight being 2020, I'm actually very grateful that I didn't get things that I wanted, right? Because if I had gotten what I wanted, I wouldn't have gotten A, B, C, or D. I'm especially able to look back on, relationships that didn't go the way that I wanted. And I'm like, whoo, dodged a bullet. Lane, what about you? What does your day-to-day look like?
It's changed over the years. When I was in early recovery, I was with a group of people every day at 7:00 in the morning. I've been able to travel all around and meet people everywhere and create different practices. So, it used to be a daily walk. It used to be sitting. And now it depends on the day. Sometimes, I roll and go. So what that means is I roll out of bed, get out of my bed. I go to a different place. I meditate for a minimum of 45 minutes. And then I go exercise. And there are days when I don't exercise, or there are days when I don't practice early in the morning. But I'm doing something where I'm having silence and a conversation with the universe or some kind of source that sustains my recovery. Mm-hmm. Because when I'm not in that kind of conscious contact place, I'm just an a-hole. Like, forget it. Like, all bets are off. I'm like completely self-centered and, it's like got to be my way. But when I can sustain and maintain that connection with whatever it is through prayer, through meditation, through that stillness, I have wonderful days, day after day after day. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Tony, what about you?
Yeah, well, I have a lot to learn from Amy and Lane about meditating because my monkey mind pretty much chases me around the room anytime I try to sit still. So I wouldn't call it my own way of meditating, but I kind of actively meditate, and really all that is mindfulness, right? But and so in my day, I have I have a job that actually pays my bills, and I have to deal with people, a lot of people, not all on the Mensa scale, and so I have to work. I have to work hard through that trigger, pause, response. Right. So I have to be very mindful that I'm in complete control of what my response is to any situation in life. But I really need to take that pause, even if it's just a few milliseconds, and make sure what comes out of my mouth is I'm not going to be eating crow later. So that's really where kind of spirituality, and again, my intent is not to be harmful to others, not to be mean to others, and so I can sleep well at night. So that's probably the biggest practice I use daily.
Yeah, the power of the pause is really where it's at. It will work when practiced, for sure. Amy mentioned a book. Like, do any of you have a book that is like, if you had to recommend a book to someone that was new on their spiritual journey, I'd be interested to know which book each of you might recommend.
Anything by Ernest Holmes.
Anything by Ernest Holmes. Okay. Amy?
I could throw another one out there that I really like. It's Buddhism and the 12 Steps, Daily Reflections.
Okay. All right. Tony?
Yeah, and unfortunately, mine was written in 1902, so it's a little heavy to get through. But Varieties of Religious Experience by William James is a fascinating, very broad look at spiritual experiences and spiritual, thought processes. It's amazing. I've probably read it 10 times.
I'd also recommend, I love that one, Tony, and I'm also going to recommend Breath by James Nestor.
This is a good list of books that I have not read myself. So now I'm going to have to go read some of these books for sure. So we've talked about incorporating mindfulness and daily practice. We've talked about the power of the pause. If we were going to put together a spiritual toolkit, and let's just pretend that we're all together in person and we can put like things into this toolkit that we want to give somebody who's at any point in their journey, but they're in a place of brokenness and they're looking for some healing. And kind of what I mean by that is, in early recovery, I stopped drinking, I stopped using drugs, and I got pretty happy, pink cloudish, things started going pretty good. But a couple years in, because I hadn't really changed any other behaviors, I ended up in a very deep depression, and I felt very broken on the inside. And I don't know for sure, but at the time it felt even worse than when I hit my bottom and got sober. It was like I had figured out a level to go down even lower. And the problem was I was so sober that I was feeling all the things. It was really overwhelming. And so I got into a program of action that helped me work through some of those things. So if we were putting together a kit for somebody like that, what kinds of things would we put in the kit that we could give this person? Anybody have any ideas? I guess it would be all of those books.
Yeah, I think one thing I would definitely recommend is either one of those smooth worrying stones, or that if you're in a 12-step program, to keep your token handy and just early in sobriety, have that in your hand and rubbing it constantly if you're experiencing anxiety or fear or anything of that nature. I've found that kind of that physical release is always just a little bit helpful.
I love that, Tony. And it reminds me of a funny story. When I was in early sobriety, there was actually like a sober gift shop here in Seattle. It was over near Ballard, Amy, if you're like, where was this? And I remember going in there. I don't know how much time I had, but it was safe to say I had a couple of months. And so I found myself in this little shop and I was looking at all the books and jewelry and different tchotchkes. And I came up to this case that had all these beautiful coins. They were a lot fancier than the coins or the tokens I had previously seen in church basements. And so I spied this beautiful 1-year coin, and it was like bedazzled and it was sparkly. And I was like, I would like to buy that. I would like to buy my 1 year. And they were like, and the gal behind the counter was like, sure, yeah, I'll get it out for you. She's like, do you have a year? And I was like, well, no, but if I buy it, then I will. And she's like, yeah, it doesn't work like that. So you can't buy your way into a more spiritual behavior. That is for sure.
I love that. That was awesome. I would also add to a toolkit. I'm a big old fan of just paper and pen journal. And even if that's like a spiral notebook. And the reason being is I really appreciate that whole idea of like the embodied cognitive connection, right? Writing things down and then being able to rip them out of a spiral notebook as I kind of go through some of my processes of what I might need to do and being able to go out back and safely burn them. I am really big on visual things and tactile things and ways that I can really embrace whatever I'm experiencing and going through. So I would add some things like that. Like I'm, like a sage burner in like a new location and stuff like that. So I would add those things in addition to, I also really like those Japanese rake gardens. And the reason I like those is because when my life feels totally chaotic and out of control, which it often does, I'm like, but I can rake this sand and it will stay that way until someone comes along and just, messes it up. But it's kind of this peaceful feeling of like, oh my gosh, there's one thing in my life that will just get raked and look nice and make me temporarily happy, but very peaceful inside as well.
That's so funny. I have an altered version of one of those sand Zen boxes. Mine is a dog park. So it's full of sand and it's got a dog house and 2 little Boston Terriers in it and some little tchotchkes. And I used to have it on my desk at work when I did not work from home. And one time somebody came by and put Tootsie Rolls in it to make it look like little poos. I did not think that was very funny. Actually, I did think it was funny. I'm just sad that I didn't think of it first. I'm curious. I'm also a big fan of pen to paper, although the older I get and the less handwriting I do, the more I don't like my own handwriting. It's like hard for even me to read. I'm curious, have any of you or have all of you ever done the Artist Way morning pages exercise?
Yes.
Yeah.
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 In my early recovery, I did. Amy, I didn't take you for a sage person. I love when we get on here and I find out new things about you. It's so cool. I am not a sage person. No. What's the other one? There's another little scent thing that people like.
Like patchouli?
No, definitely not patchouli.
No.
It's like a stick. There's a stick.
Oh, incense?
No, well, there's many incense, but there's a certain, I can't think of it, but there's another one that I'm always like, oh, they do that smelly stuff. There's spiritual stuff, whatever. It's cool. Everybody has their thing.
Lane is anti-spiritual smells, for the record.
Yeah, no.
Anti-spiritual smells.
Well, lavender is a nice smell. I can have lavender.
That's lavender. Eucalyptus,
right? Change the olfactory, change the senses, change the brain, change the mood. That's great. Yeah. So that could be put into somebody's toolbox along with your patchouli or sage. I also want to add a breathwork class. Finding a breathwork facilitator to support you in letting shizzle go. Like that is magic practice. And if you haven't done one, making sure that you have a practitioner that can hold that space for you because your life will transform before your very eyes.
With breathwork.
With breathwork, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then it could become a regular, practice. If you did like a 30-day deep dive and then boom, things are going to change, and then you just continue on.
I mean, I have not ever done breath work in that way. I have done breath work when I've taken yoga classes. So I'm curious. I know it's different. I understand that it's different. I know though, when I do deep breathing, like if I'm pretending that I still smoke cigarettes, for example, I get a nice little buzz off of that, which let's be clear, I love a buzz. So I'm assuming breath work gives you some kind of like good feeling. You get very direct results.
Well, yeah, you drop into a different state and you alter your brain. So in that state, you are releasing, I mean, you can release trauma, you can, like fears, all kinds of things are happening in the body, right? You're releasing from the body, which holds everything. You're oxygenating the entire body, which shifts it. So it's pretty profound. And especially for some, people who are seeking recovery from addiction and trauma or mental angst, it could be a great tool for anybody.
I second the breath work. I think that's awesome. And also very lightweight for the toolkit, very minimalist. I like it. Space saving.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we don't want to have heavy baggage here.
No.
The toolkit needs to be light and easy to carry, pack with us.
Right, you got to be able to get up and go at any time, right? I mean, I can take that on a trip.
Yeah, definitely find a guide. Definitely find a guide for your breath work, because if you go out and just try Wim Hof or one of those others just right out of the gate, you may find yourself passed out on the floor.
Yeah, you definitely need a facilitator.
All right. Yes, this is the safety first situation. All right. Well, as we wind down on this conversation, I like to move into a fire question round, which we call sober shots. Pew, 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 pew. We were going to try to come up with a sound, and we haven't yet. So you just get me going, pew, 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 pew. All right. So I'm going to ask you a question. You have to just give your quick answer. It's going to go, I'm going to ask the question, Amy, Lane, Tony, and we'll just go in that order with each question. Okay, here we go. Yoga or meditation?
Yoga.
Meditation.
Meditation.
Favorite mantra or prayer?
Bless them, change me.
Release me.
Serenity prayer.
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Sunrise.
Sunset.
My night owls, yes. And one word that you would use to describe your spiritual journey?
Evolving.
Ongoing.
Monkey mind. Is that one word?
Yep, totally. It's hyphenated. Sure. Well, that's awesome. We will have you all back on future episodes as we will dive into more detailed topics around spirituality. But we just wanted to give our listeners and our audience a kind of a lay of the land of all the different things that are happening over in the Spiritual Gangster section. We have content on stoicism. We have content on spiritual substance. We have content on astrology, including sober horoscopes and sober tarot card reading. We have Thirsty for Wonder, which is using the Celtic calendar alongside recovery. There are many different options and practices available to you from our group of Spiritual Gangsters. And we hope that you'll take your fingers for a scroll, go through the website, be curious, keep an open mind, and let us know that when you find something that works for you. We definitely would love to hear from you. Feel free to slide into our DMs. And until the next time, keep it real, keep it fun, and keep it sober. Thanks for tuning in, because let's be real, we're way more fun than your ex's drunk texts.
If you laughed, learned, or just need more of our voices in your life, honestly, I mean, who wouldn't? Hit that subscribe button, leave us a review, and send this episode to your sober or your I swear I'm only drinking on the weekends besties.
And if you have a story, feedback, or hey, maybe you just want to slide into our DMs like it's 2012, well, you know we're here for it. Find more curated magic at thesobercurator.com. And remember, getting sober matters, staying sober matters more. Until next time, keep it real, keep it fun, and keep it sober.